Okay, so without much more ado, I'll introduce the panel. We have Helen Bartow sitting on your left here. Helen is a third-generation farmer in this valley, and she'll have a lot to say about what that means to her and what she might be able to help you with. Sitting next to her is Howard McCoy, who is a Pomo man who is, willing to talk to us about just about anything, but we'll probably press him about acorns if we can. Howard. And then next to him is Grandma Mavis Bromaghan here, and she is well known for her canning and her knitting and other kinds of wonderful home lifestyle skills that she has, so we can ask her those questions. And sitting on my right and your right is our moderator, Kristen Bradford, who will be asking the questions, and I think there'll be a question and answer session at the end, and Kristen will be in charge from now on.
Thank you, Annie. Good evening, and thank you all for coming. We're really excited to be having our second Elder Talk, and hopefully we'll continue this series as we move forward. We're really delighted to have all three of our guests here tonight. I think they each offer a little bit of a different perspective about living in the Willits area. And I'm just going to jump in with some questions, and then after a bit we'll open it up for the audience to ask questions as well of our guests. And excuse me, I have a little cold this week, so bear with me. Grandma Mavis, you left Minnesota and came out west in 1940?
Yes, during the war.
During the war.
Yeah, during the war.
And came on the train to Richmond.
Yeah, an old jumpy train. It wasn't a nice train.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and why you came out here?
We called it the cattle car. Anyway, it was a bumpy road, and I'd never been out of my hometown or county. So everything was new. I didn't know how to act in the city because I was a town brat growing up in Minnesota. And but anyway, I did really well, I think, because my grandfather had trained me in hardware business, and I could solder and weld and bend metal and everything else, so I became a journeyman sheet metal worker before the men did that hired in the same month. And that made me happy. Anyway, that's all I ever did was men work until, on a farm with my folks. But I lived with my grandparents because they lived in town near the school. And 2 miles was too far to walk to the schoolhouse, so I stayed with Grandma. And she spoiled me. I was a town brat, I think.
And when did you come up to the Willits area from Richmond?
We came from Richmond. Well, actually, we moved from Richmond to San Leandro because my husband was working for Bjorn Equipment, who sold Ellis Chalmers tractors. And they were bringing their tractors and selling them in Willits, and they were going into the steep lands. And those great big logs that you see pictures of, you don't see anymore, were on the trucks, but they'd haul them out with the Ellis Chalmers, ACs I called them. And anyway, a lot of people were buying tractors then, the Ellis Chalmers, the big ones. So we just did well. My husband was a diesel engineer and certified welder. He welded left hand, right hand, ambidextrous. He could do mirror welds. And this way, is that better? Anyway, I'm not quite used to one this close. But we just fit right in. I was with the Boy Scouts the first year and Cub Scouts. By the way, I taught survival at Brookdale's before there were trails up there.
Who did you teach that to?
Huh?
Who did you teach the survival skills to? Who did you teach the survival skills to?
Oh, well, Danny Dascom, the pastor in the school up here, and the church up here on, was it Wood Street? The Baptist church. Anyway, he was one of my little kids. And I can't think, I see them all the time. Dr. Smalley's son, what is his name? He's a lawyer uptown here. I just forget his name, I'd call him Hey You. And his son is a friend of mine. His name is Chris, but...
And were they with the Boy Scouts?
Huh?
They were with the Boy Scouts?
Well, no, yes, it was Boy Scouts. And another one is manager of the penny store in Hawaii. So I keep in touch with all those kids. And they won when they had the contest of the Boy Scouts. They won first because I had taught them survival.
What sort of skills specifically were you teaching them?
On what they could eat and what they couldn't eat, and where, you know, the weeds and so on that they can eat, and how to build a fire, and how to build a shelter if it's cold, with twigs and branches. And they had to keep their some tools in their pockets so they could use that for cutting branches and twigs. And
Thank you, Mavis. I'm going to come back a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and ask Mr. McCoy a question. I understand you grew up at the Sherwood Rancheria?
Up till I was 8 years old, 9 years old. Oh, there you go. Yes, until I was 9, and I went to kayak.
Okay. And tell me about your school experience in that area.
Well, I started school in the first grade up at the little schoolhouse here by the graveyard. Yes, I spent my first year there, and then I came here my second grade.
To this building?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we from here, and I started at Albertina. It's a Catholic school in kayak. I graduated here.
And when you went to Sherwood School, were you living close to the school?
Here?
No, when you were up in Sherwood?
3.5 miles one way. We walked it, me and my sister.
Krista, can we trade mics with Grandma Mavis? No,
Go ahead.
yeah, use Grandma Mavis's mic. There we go. Just put that one
Have
down.
him hold it in front of his mouth.
It wasn't broadcasting. So go ahead and have that one. You were telling me about
How far it was for you to go to school and how you got there every day?
Me and my sister walked it every day. It's 7 miles, 3.5 down and 3.5 back. Yeah,
And regardless of the weather,
regardless of the weather.
and what did you take with you for school to eat, or did they serve you lunch there?
No, everybody packed their lunch. There was no facility for her. In fact, if I can remember right, I think it was outhouses for bathrooms.
Okay.
And first through the 8th grade was in one room. So, and one teacher. I don't know how she did it. Evidently she must have been a superstar, because today it takes 15 people to teach one class.
For sure. Did many of the children walk to school that far, or were more of them closer to the schoolhouse?
Well, it's put like this time, you could always tell the ones that had money and the ones that didn't. You know, the ones that didn't walk and the ones that their families were little, had a few dollars, and they either dropped off in school or, you know, there was no horses outside, let me put it like that, so somebody brought them or they walked, yeah.
Thank you. Mrs. Bartow, you came to Willits in 1926, is that correct?
In 1926, he returned to Willits with my mother and me and went to work for the Central Mendocino County Water and Power Company and worked for that outfit until 1952.
And the land that you moved to, that had been in your family for a while?
I live in my grandmother's place right now, south of town, foot of Pine Mountain.
And what crops has your family grown over the years there?
Corn, wheat, oats, vegetables. We have our own meat, raise sheep and cattle. I had a milk cow. My grandfather milked 3 or 4 cows, separated the cream in a de la valve separator, and the cream they put in a 5-gallon milk can, set it in the cooler, in the milk house until it was full. Then they took it to town, set it on the rail car, and sent it to San Francisco. And I don't think they had much trouble with all these other things people are talking about nowadays. At least they didn't hear about it.
What sort of things? Like,
E. coli and all that stuff.
and how has what you've grown or your family's grown on your property changed over the last couple decades?
Well, during 1942, during the war, we had about 5 acres of sweet corn that my grandmother in the past had brought to town and delivered to customers, but the deer come to the valley and looked like an army march through it. We haven't grown that much since.
So originally there weren't deer in the valley?
No, the men had hounds and they hunted the mountains all winter long. You can hear them in the night listening to them bark. Sometimes, once in a while, when I was in high school one time, they sat under a tree all winter and the hounds were barking and they couldn't see the shoot. And they needed another gun or some more ammunition. They come to the house and I went with them. They shot the queen out of the tree and they all went home and I guess they went to bed. I don't know.
And from your experience, how much acreage does it take to raise cattle and sheep?
Well, I don't know what it is now, but here, about 30 years ago, it took 40 acres to raise sheep, a sheep. No, 40 acres for a cow, and about 3 acres for a sheep.
Thank you.
We can do a lot of feeding then, but we have more livestock on the land nowadays than do more feeding. There was dairies around, chicken farms, everybody had something.
Okay, thank you. Mavis, I understand you spent some time up on the Lost Coast.
What?
You spent some time up on the Lost Coast.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us where that was and what you did up there?
Well, I was elected, or something, selected maybe, mayor of the community. And it's the Jackass Creek, so they call me Jackass Mayor, and they still call me that. I was teacher's aide, and I taught Sunday school for 10 years up there. And the happiest years of my life were those kids, and they're still coming back, and we're going to have a big reunion here in Willits in May, coming up May. And a lot of people call it Wheeler. It's on the Jackass Creek. We had a schoolhouse, and the schoolhouse was not a county schoolhouse. It was a community building, just used for everything, dances and everything. And somebody went to the school board and said, they're even drinking in the schoolhouse. So they came to check on us. And our manager said, no, it's not the schoolhouse, it's a community center. But if you want to build a schoolhouse, you can do it right there. And they said, no, thank you. They thought we had a good school. So we had a good teacher. Probably the best teacher my kids ever had was there. And she got me involved more than I needed to be, but I loved every minute. And so She's passed away now, but I keep in touch with her grandkids, so that helps.
Were you there year-round? Were you there year-round through the winters?
Yeah, yeah, we had church, we had everything there.
And did you spend the winter there?
Oh, yes, full time, 10 years.
And that's pretty remote up there. What kept you going and what sort of things did you do?
A lot of people called us the Wolf Creek people because Wolf Creek was the people who built the building was from Wolf Creek in Pennsylvania. And so that was the name it first got. But it was on the Jackass Creek, and it's still on the map. And it's the northwest corner of this county. And you can't, it's wilderness, you can't even drive in there now. But the last time I went in, the ranger brought me in so I could go in. And I think I might go in one more time. Anyway, a lot of people hike in there now. You can hike in. And it's 9 miles north of Usal, if you know where that is. And Usal was Captain Dollar's headquarters. And way back when, I don't know. Well, he left at the turn of the century, I think. But all it was after that because he hauled lumber to San Francisco after the earthquake. But
And was that station there strictly, was the station there strictly set up for the lumbering?
yeah, it was a mill.
And
it was a big mill.
Was a mill there on the creek? And how many people were employed there?
30 families.
30 families for 10 years.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
But I had 4 kids there in school.
That were your children that you took with you to work there?
But before we went there, my kids were here in a room down that way. 2 of my kids went to school here, in the school.
And then did you move back to the Willits area after you worked there?
Yeah, right 2 blocks over. So anyway, Willits is now my town. I'll be here forever. It's my town. It's been really good to me. And somebody said, was teasing me about hugging. I hug all the kids that come back to me, and a lot of them, you'd be surprised how many would come up and hug me and say, well, you don't have to remember me, but I remember you. And it's nice. I had a daycare center, you know about that. Anyway, kids, that's all I do is play with kids.
And can you tell me a little bit, I hear that you've put up a couple quarts of canned goods over the years.
Couple quarts. I don't do much anymore, but one year, the people had apricot trees, neighbors did. And he had a few jars, but he didn't know how to can. And he was German too, so he came from Germany and he didn't talk like we did. So anyway, he wanted to fill one wall. I had shelves on one wall, and but they were only like 4 inches thick, and so he wanted to fill the whole hall. My husband said, we'll fool him. So he added another 6 inches onto that wall, every shelf. And so anyway, we got double what we had planned on. And I can't. Apricots and apples and peaches and jelly and jams and, yeah, a lot of it.
When you canned, did you usually do it yourself or with other people? Was it a group activity? Can you tell us about that?
No, it was me and my neighbor.
And it sounds like you always had children around.
Kids?
Had kids around. What did you...
Well, I quit taking in kids when I forgot how to call and train. I said it was a choo-choo.
But with children around the house all the time?
All the time. They used to call it the kid house. And then...
And how...
When the neighbor kids weren't at my house for anything, they called it the potty stop, because I said, anytime you need to go, you come to my house. So they wouldn't go use the bathroom at school, they'd come to my house for the potty stop. I like that.
And when you were canning, I'm curious to know, what, if you had any strategies for keeping the children away from everything that you were putting up, so that you had something left over
Those
afterwards?
years, I just had my kids. It was Willits that I dragged all the kids in. Cub Scouts, I've been with the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts, Campfire Girls and the Girl Scouts and the Junior Horsemen and the PAL program from the first hour. And now a little bit with the Boys and Girls Club, but I'm getting slow and lazy and old.
So, we spoke earlier about trades in the area. You had told me some of the jobs that your father and your uncles had in the area. Can you talk a little bit about the sort of jobs that they had when you were growing up in this area?
Well, my dad, he was a logger and a mill worker. And so, you know, and we, vaguely, I can remember him was moving up to Leggett Valley for one summer, and he worked for a man up there and making split stuff out of record. And it was all hand done. There was no chainsaws. It was all done with cross-cut saws and then, like she said, well, about the big trees coming down. Yeah, there were some big trees up there. Yeah, I can still remember that part. Yeah, and then they worked down. I don't get to the bank. I think the mill was called. It was owned by Union Pacific, I think, here in Willits. That could have been somewhere in Pacific. But all I remember is that me and my cousin after school, we'd go out there and ride around the logs in the pond. My dad and uncle used to come and run us off all the time. He didn't spank the hell out of us when we got home. Yeah.
And you mentioned too some work with hops down in Ukiah. Can you tell us about the hops in Ukiah?
Yeah, my dad went to work for a guy by the name of Lou Hildress. It is still, I think it's still owned by the Hildress family. And is it? Yeah. And
They're still there.
Yeah. It's not hops anymore. No, and so that was my first adventure into the hop fields. And I didn't pick any hops. That was not, I just didn't think that was up to my standard. But I did a lot of playing in the hop fields and stuff. But I was just a pretty small kid at that time. And by the time I did get up to the age of where I guess I could work, it was all, they were gone. And parents had taken over by then.
So that you saw them pull out the hops and put in pear orchards down in Ukiah?
Oh, yeah.
He's asking for $1. Helen, since we're on the topic of livelihood and employment, I think you mentioned before that there was a sawmill under every manzanita bush in town.
Well, not just in town, all over Mendocino County. There was Little Lake Lumber, there was Harold Castile, there was Castile Mill there, right out here by the Bassers, and there was one at all over the hills. That's why I say under every manzanita bush. There was logs and lumber, and you remember the logs and lumber that went through it. There used to be,
Each stacks of burners.
right, those dome dirt burners that they don't allow anymore. And there was 100 carloads of lumber leaving Willits on the railroad.
What years was it that the railroad was going through town with lumber approximately?
Always. But there was an exodus of people in lumber right after World War II.
So at World War II there was a transition from the timber industry to what sort of...
No, it was the other way around.
Okay, can you explain that to me?
Well, during the war, those that weren't drafted went to the Bay Area to work in the defense plants, and they didn't come back to Willits to do the farming because they got the easy money. And in the meantime, the older folks weren't around anymore to do it. And with all the people coming in town, they sold a piece here and sold a piece there until they're all chopped up.
A piece of land?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell me what other sorts of trades or occupations were had here besides timber?
Oh, well, I grew up with farming. And the timber come in after I was grown.
Okay. And can you explain a little bit about the local dairies? You mentioned before that there were
Oh, let's see.
some dairies.
There was two kinds of dairies. There was a bee dairy, and they probably, like my grandmother, would take a can of cream and set it on the siding down here at the depot and hauled it off to San Francisco. But there was some that were bigger dairies. There was a dairy there at the scales, above the scales, back there in the woods, and there's barns along the highway there were dairy barns. There was a hop kill there too, and there was, Simonson had his, but he came in, Pedro Silly had one there, and there was right across from Mariposa, there was a dairy there. I stood there and watched Mr. Jensen in churn butter. He had a butter churn about half the size of this table. And he took the butter from some of these dairies, or cream, and then where there were 3 dairies along Hearst Road along there, and Bart Ducker had a dairy up there by Edith Page, and there were chicken houses everywhere, a couple thousand chickens apiece. That kept me busy.
Man had chickens live there by the Y on East Hill Road, just up there a little bit. He had a truck, and he'd go to Petaluma and pick up chicken feed for from poultry producers down there. Of course, Petaluma is the chicken center of the world
At that time, and he'd bring feed up here and distribute to all of their chicken places, and then he'd load up their crates of eggs. Now the crates of eggs they must have been a foot square, a foot high, and about 3 feet long.
I think they had gross of eggs in there.
And were those dairy products and eggs distributed locally or?
No, shipped out.
Shipped out. And
Everybody had their own cow and chickens, and gardens.
so were there shops in town?
Oh, yeah.
And what were they selling?
Well, let's see. Right there where the mall is, there was a hardware store, a grocery store, and a clothing store, all in one building. And then Quadrio's had a store, and this was the lady last time. Her family had a little grocery store there in between, and
There were a couple drugstores and 2 meat markets.
2 meat markets, not in the grocery store. Safeway was here, and Purity was here when I was growing up. I think Purity came first.
And can you tell a little bit about the changes from the smaller groceries to what we have today and sort of what you've seen over the last couple decades with respect to where people shop?
Not really. Because I was busy raising a family and doing my own thing. I wasn't on Main Street. But I do know that I don't like to go to Ukiah to do my shopping, because we used to have 2 furniture stores here. We had a couple of people photographers.
Professional. Well, KD Reynolds used to get out there in the middle of the arena and take pictures of those bucking horses and bull elders.
I remember a few too. He had to jump pretty fast. And there was an airport across the Rodale grounds. My dad had something to do with that, and I was in high school at the time. Went several trips to Oakland to find out how to do that. And a lot of the cowboys would fly in, do their riding, and fly out. And they figured it was too dangerous taking off over Willits, and the town was growing, so they moved it up on the hill.
And can you tell me about how the products that you say are shipped out were transported? Were they?
Well, they went by train or truck. I know Dick Will, it was during the strike time in the Bay Area. And his dad run shotgun for him, so he'd get his truck to Willits and back with, I don't remember what he hauled down, but I do know that he hauled produce back.
Okay. And somebody, Hank, tonight was mentioning that quite a ways back to have grains processed in Ukiah, to have grains milled in Ukiah, it would be a week-long ride down.
Well, what I remember my grandmother saying that they had a mill out there where the Centennial Dam is, and my grandfather would leave the grain there, go to Ukiah and do his business, because it usually took all day, a horse and buggy or wagon, I don't know what he took, whatever was necessary, and then he'd pick up the flour on the way home.
Okay, thank you. As Andy mentioned this evening, there's several members of our WELL organization who are trying to eat locally and trying to focus on food from within the Little Lake Valley or Mendocino County, or if we have to, 100 miles away. And it sounds like, you know, a few decades ago, you wouldn't imagine eating something that came from more than 100 miles away because so much of it was here. And I'm wondering if you can help us to understand what the challenges are to having more food produced and distributed locally. And I'd like to hear each of your responses since you have the microphone. Go ahead and start now.
Ralph Feud and Pete Mella and Otto Arnold had several acres in produce that we could go pick up ourselves. I'm not sure if they took them into town or not. The kid growing up doesn't know those things, just what people, adults do. And there was fruit and vegetables in the store, but we didn't, at that time, some of these new vegetables have been developed. I never saw broccoli in the store when I was growing up. And I'd heard of that vegetable that they grow in the South that everybody likes. I heard about it one time when my children were babies and wondered what it looked like, and I saw it in the store and I thought, how do you cook that? And I asked my husband how you cook that because he was in the service for a certain length of time in North Carolina. He said, you don't want to cook that slimy stuff. So I don't know how, I don't even know what it was.
Avocado?
No, it wasn't. No, it looked like a bean.
Oh, slime.
Those Southerners
No,
know.
I was offered that one. Okay.
No, but you don't.
Helen, would you pass the microphone to Mr. McCoy? And I'd just like to hear your thoughts on what some of the challenges are or around producing food locally, growing food locally, and selling it locally, given that 50 years back, probably most of what people ate, they were growing locally or buying from their neighbors.
I don't think it's cost-wise. It would help you a lot of money because I don't think you'd make it by making it here and selling it here because it would cost you too much. It's just like take the Spanish people, most of the children my age, they all made their own tortillas. Today they go down to the store and buy it for less, but 1/10 of what it would cost to make it. So I would think that to try to grow or try to manufacture something here and sell locally here, I don't think it would fly because it's just, if you could drive to Ukiah and buy 10 times the amount for half the money.
Right, and part of that we're appreciating that the reason it's so cheap to buy things these days is because all of the energy that goes into it is based on oil and fuel that is relatively cheap. But as those costs go up, we may see that the products that are so inexpensive to buy now are more expensive and becoming more expensive. So we're trying to sort of get ahead of the game and start producing things ourselves for our community here. So, Mavis, do you have some thoughts about the about the canning locally? Did you want to have any more comments about that?
I don't know, but I know the foods are different here than where I grew up. I've never seen broccoli before. And rhubarb goes wild there. My dad one time sent a truckload to North Dakota because it grows wild where he is. But I didn't live on the farm except 3 months in the summer. And I was in town for school in high school, 12 years in town. And then on road construction. So anyway,
Let me ask you a different question. You had a wonderful story earlier that talked about how your friends and family and neighbors all came together one year for your Happy Sad Christmas story. I wonder if you might share that with our audience.
yeah, well, my husband had passed away and my son had been killed by a drunk driver, so I'm a mad mother. And so I had my kids and 3 grandkids. My neighbor called and she said her husband was rejecting a kidney, he had to have a transplant. And she said she didn't want to see her kids having the seizure. She called the doctor, but she called me, and well, he had to be sent away to the hospital, and he did pass away. And this was like the middle of December, so I got 4 of those kids on top of my 6. And then my other neighbor, and the kids, they're still kind of around here. She went off the bank up here and broke her jaw, had her mouth taped shut or wired shut, I think, and she lost her teeth. She was in the hospital and her kids couldn't even go and visit her, and I got those 3 girls. So anyway, I had a house full of kids and only 1 paycheck. So what do? You buy groceries, you don't buy toys. And El Canepa, you remember El and Jackie Canepa, Christmas Eve, they went through that whole store, the Rexall drugstore, and they took everything, books, read aloud books, and all the games, and all of anything that we could use, and gift wrap, and toothpaste, and dish soap, and fancy, everything. I mean, everything, 5-pound box of candy, and Whitey's Bakery was still there. And every day they sent all of their leftover bread and donuts and whatever they had. Every day they sent it over. And the Lutheran Church sent over all kinds of clothes and things. And the Smiths, I'm not Claudia, but the other Smiths, they brought me cream and eggs at least once a week. And so here there were, all of us there. And the teacher was having a party and had a tree all decorated, and she was going to be gone for Christmas, so she brought the tree all ready to plug in, and we had a tree. So anyway, we had one happy big family. We're still close friends. And I have a lot of people in town I don't even know. Mark Walker and his wife Edith then brought in, and somebody, I can't remember who he was, brought a big full box of Golden Delicious apples. And I mean, there was so many things brought in and so fast, when they found out about it, that was it. We just had one happy, sad Christmas. The one father died, and the other one, the mother healed, and the others, the 3 parents, had passed on. So it was a lot of help from town. Everybody in town seemed like they were in and out. And I just can't thank everybody because I didn't even know who they were then. but, you know, some of them. But it's just, Willits has been a good town. And something else happened. My roof started to leak.
With 13 kids under it.
Huh?
With 13 kids under it.
No, the kids got home, this was a different time. And the people at Little Lake, they were making, I remember, furniture. They closed down the mill, their shop at noon on Friday, and there was a truck and everything else there with supplies, and they all went in, and I blame Miles Sullivan for that. He's not living anymore. But anyway, they put the shingles on the roof, tore the old ones off, and on Sunday all the women came and had a potluck dinner in my yard and lost the bill. They'd give it to me when they found it. Well, they haven't found it. 25, 30 years, so what do you say? Anyway, those are the things that make me love Willits. All the new kids, they're so special, they're so good, they're so dear.
You know, it's just, I know a lot of children in this community.
Willits is my town.
Everybody. Thank you. I'd like to ask Helen about children too, and specifically, you've mentioned growing up on the farm, and I wonder if you would share some of the expectations of children in the 30s and 40s compared to today.
Well, those who lived in the country had chores to do. There was pigs to slop, there was cows to milk, chickens to feed. And depending on the time of the year it was, there was fence to build. And those kind of things, the kids went right along with the folks. But, and then there was involved with the 4-H, and they had their animals in their projects, so that took 10 years of doing.
I wonder if you could all answer a question about the last 50 years and what changed for the better and what has changed for the worst as you see it over the last 50 years in the Little Lake Valley in this area.
Well, it's all chalked up to what it was. It's all chalked up because a lot of these places down here were around 200 or 300 acres to make a living. And they used to have, well, for a number of years, they spent one day a month, one day a week. One day a week, they sold nothing but sheep. There were that many sheep in Mendocino County. And there were sheep all over Willits. I remember when I was riding the school bus to town, man had about 200 head of sheep going down Valley Street, going to a pasture. The bus stopped, wait for them to pass. Now you go down the road with a piece of equipment that is just as wide from the white line to the yellow line, and they honk their horn to blow you off the road because they can't get around it. And a lot of times you have to move that equipment several miles to get from one field to the other. I remember, well, I wasn't very big, we drove sheep from where I live now, clear down there to Tubby Shelton's, where we got just before you get to Canyon Road and Hurst Road, or yeah, Hurst Road, well, right there on the corner.
Oh, that's so they could change pastures, or?
We took them there to shear. Because in those days, they sheared with a blade, and the shearer would come to town, and you'd shear with a blade, you'd shear just about as many as they do with an electric shears now.
And can you tell me a little bit about the sheep you have now and the wool from your sheep and what's happening with it now compared to?
Don't have near as many sheep you did here several years ago because the panther and the coyotes and the bear come in right there in my backyard, shot one in the face right out of the bedroom window one night. You're not supposed to do that at night, but you gotta protect your property. And, the sheep used to wander all over the ranch, but now they just kind of pick and choose where they go. And I don't have as many now as we did. One of the reasons, because the price of wool is not what it was. We used to ship a couple sacks of wool. Of course, there was other places around the Lake Valley that shipped more. And it cost $2.75 a head, if you're lucky, to be sheared, the sheep to be sheared, regardless of what size they are, unless they're the buck sheep, and they usually charge double. And this year I took it to Ukiah one day. I could take my wool to Ukiah, and they would load it on another truck and haul it to Sacramento to a depot, and then they baled it. Well, some of the bigger sheep ranches had wool bales anyhow, and you see that at the Boonville Fair. And they have a wool growers to do on the last Sunday of July, and you see spinners and weavers and so forth then. But they bale it, I guess it's like a hay baler, I'm not sure, I never saw one. And then they shipped it from Stockton to New Mexico. And I haven't had my checks yet, so I don't know what I got this year for the wool.
Did there used to be a local market for your wool?
Used to be able to, well, when I was a little kid growing up, they used to come around to check the wool, and they wanted it. They'd come around and look at your sheep, and they wanted them. And you wanted your cattle. A lot of them went into the slaughterhouse here in Willits and went to the butcher shops or wherever it went. I didn't keep track of it, because a kid growing up doesn't always know those kind of things. And
Was it the market for your wool in the past?
We used to take it from here to Ukiah. Earl Fullerton used to buy it, and there was another fellow who used to buy it. And they'd take a little slit about 4 inches long out of the sack, look at it, feel of it, stretch of it, and check it out. And depending on what the staple of wool was, if they give you your price, you walk around the corner, they sit down and write the check. You go home and do whatever you do with the check.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy, I wonder if you might answer the question that I posed earlier about what has changed over the last 50 years for the better and for the worse in this area. You want to take a pass? I think she's ready with an answer.
Well, Willits has everything. You go down Commercial Street, from the highway on down, on Commercial Street. What do we have down there? We have everything. What's the motive power? We have the football field, or the, whatever they call it, and rodeo grounds. We have everything, the museum, the library, the depot, the Scott Depot, and all those beautiful redwood buildings, and the community center. And what else do we need? We've got it. Skateboards and everything the kids need. And horses. This is no one-horse town. we have horses, and I know. I work with junior horsemen, and with all their litters and everything. So, anyway,
So it sounds
what
like
do we need? I did like the little shops that we had, like Quadrios.
Can you tell us about Quadrios and what that was?
What?
What was Quadrios?
Quadrios was a grocery store, but what I liked about it was I could go over there and argue with them about who had the best cheese, the Norwegians or the Italians. And then I had to teach them how to cut the cheese. Anyway, the Quadrios, but they were all so good to me. They got samples of the cheese right away when they got it, and I used to say, no, it's just as good as the Norwegian cheese, but we argued. And Huh?
Yeah, you're supposed
There were clothes at Quadrio's,
And shoes.
Yeah.
so they sold a little bit of everything, not just.
Yeah, they had everything. And then,
A mercantile?
Right, there you go.
Okay.
Quad Wheels and the other store.
There used to be pennies here too.
Oh, yeah.
Who?
Pennies was here.
Oh, yeah, we had a penny store.
Till they put
But-
the money in the front.
But, yeah, and we had, the only thing that we don't have in Willits is fabric.
And if anybody knew Janet Oliphant, she had a fabric store after she quit teaching. And then she got, something happened to her and she couldn't sew anymore.
So her husband and her son, David, dumped all of her material on my porch. 8 boxes so heavy I couldn't lift them. So that's what I'm stuck with now, quilting. Lots of it. So anyway,
I wonder if any of you have memories of the railroad that you'd like to share with us?
The railroad? Oh, well,
whenever they needed somebody to help old ladies on the bus or mothers with children, I would get to ride to Fort Bragg and back on the skunk. And because of the insurance problem, and that was, I don't know, it was during Frontier Days or something.
but 4 or 5 times I got to ride the skunk. And then I take kids there once in a while. And that was when you could afford to. It's so expensive now to ride the skunk. I don't go anymore.
So anyway, it's a fun ride, and I've done it 20, 30, 40 times. I don't know, lost track. But
And Mr.
but
The trains, of course, I grew up.
1 block from the trains, and they were so. The time was railroad time, you know. It was just so exactly. You could set their clocks on what time they'd come in and when they blew their whistle. So sometimes I just get on the train and ride to the next town and ride back on the freight cars, like the trams. And also another thing that I did a lot was my grandmother had cows, and she'd save her tomato soup cans because we didn't
Buy many canned things. And she'd wash them up, and then she had chickens, and she'd boil the eggs, and she'd send me to, we didn't call it that then, but what do they call it? The jungle now? Where they stop from the trains? Huh?
At the station?
I don't know what they call it now.
for the taps.
The Hobo Junction. Hobo Junction?
Yeah, well, anyway, yeah, whatever it is. But they used to, when I'd go, ask them if they could sing, and they could sing, and they'd
Sing to me, and then while they drank the milk from tin cans, and then I'd take them all home and wash them up, and then next week we do the same thing. But they weren't bums and tramps.
now, then, they were people going to work during the Depression, going to work in the fields, the wheat fields and the sugar beet fields. And so I did a lot of that, and the lumber yards and the mills, and, you know,
I'm going to ask Mr. McCoy to share some of his memories. I'm going to ask Mr. McCoy to share some of his memories of the railroad. I think you mentioned riding from Ukiah to Dos Rios before.
Yes, that's when we lived there in Longvale, and up at the old Sherwood, we'd ride the train up to Longvale and get off, and then we'd go through the James's Ranch, which is only 7 miles to Sherwood. But when I was 13 years old, I decided to become a hobo. And I'm not going to say run away from home, but I left home and I went over to a little town called Calusa. And I lived on the levee over there with the hobos that drink their coffee. That's where I found how to make hobo stew. And I picked tomatoes and onions. It was exciting 3 months over there. Yeah.
What brought you back?
I had to go back to school. And you know, people call them hobos or well, vagabond or whatever you want to call them, but you know, they weren't hobos. They were just, there were people that didn't want somebody to control their lives, I guess you might say, but they were actually food tramps or whatever. They just moved from one.
Like they were migrating.
Yeah, every time, like they go to Washington and pick apples or cherries, and then they go back to the Lake County area or Medicine County area and pick pears or hops or whatever, prunes, you know, but they were not dirty people. They were, no, they weren't. And I remember sleeping one night under cardboard, and two of the older gentlemen, I thought they were old, maybe they were in their 30s, but and they made sure that I was comfortable, you know, and then one started drinking coffee and eating boiled eggs out of the coffee pot, you know. They make the coffee in the morning and they throw 6 to 8 eggs in the coffee, and they boil the eggs at the same time for lunch. You know, so they had more going for dinner.
That's efficiency. Alan, do you have some memories of the railroad that you'd like to share with us?
One that I always liked, that I remember the best is, not where I'm living now, but another house where I lived until I moved to the ranch in high school. We lay out on the porch. We had a screen porch. We lay out, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, you'd hear woo, 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 woo. The train was coming to Lincoln Willits, and I missed that. And we don't have the noon whistle anymore, so I have to look at my watch because it's time to go eat. And I usually know what to go and eat without looking at my watch, but
You could set your watch by it or count for the day with it.
The only one I know that's called the Blue Whistle is a little town is called Sebastopol.
Doesn't Potter Valley have theirs yet?
I don't know, but I know Sebastopol.
They were basketball, they were lined up on, they didn't get on.
But
I lay in the bed and hear that train whistle, and I think it was crossing the railroad track there at Branscombe. Oh, heavens, microphone.
I think I'd like to open the microphone up for any questions from the audience if you have them.
Excuse me.
Oh, sorry.
I want everybody to look over to you. My son's crying.
Oh, can you tell us what his name is?
His real name is Santiago, but everybody calls him Wilkins.
This is you. Are there any questions from the audience?
I'd like to ask, can you hear me without the mic? So we don't have to pass the mic around? That'd be right. So people stand up and maybe you can just ask your question loudly from where you're sitting. That might work. We're so short on mics. Okay. I have a question for Helen. What did you eat for snacks, like on a Sunday night if you wanted to do something fun, like I don't think you had Coca-Cola and chips, and I'm curious about what you would do with your kids to make a fun snack, like,
We had 3 meals a day.
so there was no, like, popcorn and juice?
We popped our own corn. My grandfather raised corn, and we popped it. We popped it in the stove. We had a wire basket popper. It was kind of a rectangular basket, wire basket. My dad would open up the stove and he'd pop a couple poppers full for us and smear butter and salt on it. And sometimes, couple of winters, my dad and I made model airplanes out of balsa wood. There was only about a 10-inch wingspan on it, but we used balsa wood and tissue paper. And some of the boys, the older boys, they had little gas engines, about that big, and some of their airplanes were about 4 feet long. One time one of them got away and they couldn't find out where it was. And it went out off towards Darby someplace, and this old bachelor was living out there. He had a little trouble talking, and they said, well, if you see that airplane, bring it in. Whoa, I know about flying an airplane. We didn't realize it was a model airplane. And we'd take bingo at home, or sometimes like that, but we never ate much between meals. An apple off the tree when nobody was looking, but when you're 16, how are you going to get them filled up?
Any other questions?
I'm curious about the valley, and the valley floor seems to have sub-irrigated pasture, and on the rim it seems to be dried out in the summer. Did you have mostly dryland farming of winter and spring rains in the perimeter, or was there dryland farming of summer crops in the center of the valley? I'm just curious.
There was always dryland farming. Some of them were raising potatoes and things like that. But on one end of the valley it was drier. But they talk about drilling a well in Little Lake Valley to supply the rest of Willits with water. Do they realize how many truckloads of water leave Willits for the mountains right now? And if you dug a hole down there or drilled a well down there, you drain all the wells that are already out. Because right now, all I know, 20 years ago, we had some cattle down there along Hurst Road, and when somebody there at Hawthorne was pumping, our cattle were out of water. And I know there's other ranches right now that if extra water is going on, the well goes dry. Not completely dry, but it begins to pump mud, and that's not good for a pump.
So would you dryland?
But the dryland farming was everywhere. You take along Hurst Road, there was hay crops, there was oats and wheat. Some didn't, there weren't too much barley grown here. I'm not sure why. But my grandfather said he didn't like to raise barley because the bards were hard on the horses. And speaking of horses, there's more horses now than I've ever seen in my years of growing up. Because all the horses they had then was those that they could use. There were no pleasure horses.
So were you able to dryland farm then summer crops? Where could you dryland farm summer grains and potatoes and tomatoes? What parts of the area? What parts of the Little Lake Valley? Do you understand that?
I understand that, but if you're going to grow grain, you planted it one time of the year and harvested the next time of the year. There wasn't any commercial tomatoes. They had them in there for table use.
Right.
And the corn, well, up there, we had corn. We never irrigated it, but there was a place there along East Hill Road from the bridge to the intersection East Side Road was irrigated with alfalfa in there, and they flood irrigated it. And then when the city raised the rates a certain time, they quit flooding irrigating. I know there was a little, about an acre or two that was sprinkle irrigated there at my place. But
did you have bottomland though close to the creek? Is that where you do the summer dryland stuff, or did you do dryland farming up on the slopes by your place?
Usually when you're plowing a piece of ground, you want one that's reasonably level.
Yeah. Okay.
Maria, did you have a question in the back?
I was going to ask one for her. She had asked, of all of you, what did you do for entertainment?
Oh, boy.
Well, there was dancing. There was organizations that people had. There was Grange, there was Eastern Star, there was Masons, there was Odd Fellows, there was Lions Club, there was, well, Kiwanis come on later. There was always a ladies' club of some kind. It was Farm Bureau. And there There was a roller skating rink, there was a bowling alley, and always house parties.
This is the one that works, doesn't it? Well, in the city park, we had a pavilion built there and a dance floor. You could dance out there, and that's what I did. The what?
I remember it when it didn't have a roof on it, and then years they put a roof and sidings on it.
Yeah, well, they put bathrooms in there and put a roof on that. But that used to be a fun thing to do. And there's always been something to do here in Willits. It's just everything, you know. I never learned how to play cards or games. I played them. I never had time, but there was always fun. There was always sing-alongs at my house. Every week we had a sing-along for years. In fact, my house was used for a music studio for how many years, I don't know, maybe 10. On a Thursday, I think, they'd come over. I remember Ed Burton and Hattie coming over and singing several times. And it's just one of those, you can do anything and it's fun, you know. I never played golf, but I was a champion shooter. I could shoot better than the guys could. And they gave me a box of 22 shells for every rat I killed. And I got more of them. I tied their tails together and put them over the fence, and I got more rats than the men did. So there's a lot of fun things you could do with that. And I don't know the but the plays that we have the Willits players, and they are good. So anyway, special, we have musicians here that sing my song. I'm going down the road. I'm going home. Is that what it is?
Coming down the hill.
Huh?
Coming down the hill.
Coming down the hill, yeah.
Before my time.
If you haven't heard it, you better. And it's just fun things here in Willits.
Mr. McCoy, did you want to answer that question, or you
Oh, I'm fine.
taking a bit?
No,
When I grew up, no, it wasn't about dancing or out in the moonlight, but it was who's got the fastest car and who's got all the beer in it. It was Friday night, you either watched the football game or you watched the theater.
I don't watch football.
Yeah, well, it was high school football.
But my group came to Willits when I was with the Pal Kids, and we took my group of Pal Kids out in a field, and we taught them how to play ball. With Vita Blue, how many people can do say that? With Vita Blue. Huh?
Blue was a baseball player.
So anyway,
No.
but there's a lot of fun things. The Willits players and the singers and the art. I was once president of the Arts Council, and I didn't paint. So there's fun things to do, you know. The Woods of Motive Power. How many people have a Woods of Motive Power? Antique trains as great as ours is. Not many towns. And we just have everything in Willits. It's important to me.
I have a question, maybe it's for Howard, or for Helen, or maybe Mavis, I'm not sure. Do any of you remember people eating acorns? Working with the acorn tree, acorns and, yeah.
Up until I'd say the 1970s, I guess, you could almost find acorn, they call it acorn mush in just about any Indian home. But now it has kind of a lost art, maybe, I think. They make acorn bread, they make acorn mush. I used to eat mine with cream and sugar and everybody laughed at me. Most of it use salt and pepper, but you know.
There's a ranch where they still make ground acorn. And Effie Fullwider, if anybody remembers her, Effie taught me how to do it, but I never learned. And she'd come to my house and we'd eat fish. Because Indians and Norwegians both like fish.
And I do want to ask about the fish, but I just want to finish with the acorns. Howard, do you remember how they washed and ground the acorns together?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, you know, the acorn harvest doesn't always come every year. You know, it's some years it's pretty lean, and some years it's pretty abundant. But after it's picked, and usually pick it after it cracks, you start to crack open and start dropping. And then I remember my mother and grandmother taking the hull, the shell out, you know, to get it out of the shell, the meat. And after they put it out on like a tray over there. I can remember this been a few years back, so. And let it dry. And usually the meat fell apart into two parts, like it was two halves. And then after it got to a certain point of drying, then they would, I guess today you take a pocket knife and do it, but that seemed like a bottle, a broken piece of glass was a lot. It seemed like they had they could do it better with that. But in fact, a lot of the older Indian ladies used that same method for dogwood and make baskets and stuff. So, and after they took all it's like a little skin on it. It's dark, and then they let it dry to where it's almost, I guess it's just like an oak tree you cut down. You want to make firewood, you let it dry to the point where there's no more moisture. In the old days, I'm sure, before modern grinders came along, I guess they pounded it inside of a hard surface, on the surface, and made powder out of it. But far back as I can remember, is my mother, where my dad would put the old grinder, like on the side of the table, secure it, yeah. And then my mother would grind it, and my sisters would help. And then they put it into like a dish towel, and like a round tub, and they put it into this dish towel, and then add water to it. And this could go on for days. I mean, until all the bitterness was out of it, and that's how you make acorn mush. Then from there you have to cook it, you know.
Wonderful.
Did you use
So they made the powder first, and then they got the tannic acid out. They made a powder, and then they dipped it.
It seemed like, as far back as I can remember, it's
Soak
like
it and
the old,
dry it and soak it and pound it.
the old grinders, they had like different sizes of heads that you could put onto it. The
Yeah.
person grinder too, like in the chunks, and then they put a different on it.
starting at coarse to go to finer?
Right, to almost, really powder.
Yeah, and then it was put into this dish towel or whatever it had, whatever, and it went into like a pot, I guess. And they just keep adding water to it to get all of the bitterness out of it. But have you ever tried to bite it into an acorn?
Were they soaking it in the dish towel, or were they just pouring water over it to sort of rinse it?
No, you soak it in there to get all the bitterness out.
I think there's video in the library about it.
If there's not, I have to write an article.
Any other questions?
I have a
Freddie?
Annie's bringing up the acorns reminded me of like the abundance of mushrooms around here.
Yeah.
Did you?
Make sure you know what you're picking.
But did you eat the mushrooms? Did most of you eat the mushrooms and prepare the mushrooms around here? Did you hear the question? Yeah, did you or your families make use of all the abundance of mushrooms around here in terms of food?
Yeah. Now, I don't know if they still do that or not. I know now they harvest it and ship it out of here because, you know, just about every motel room in town is buyers come in a certain part of the year and buy it all and move it out. But when I was a kid, I remember my dad and mom and my youngest sister, they'd go out and bring back a whole sacks of it, and it was deep fried because it was in a little layer. You have to make sure that all the, I guess the mushroom picks up a lot of bark and stuff inside the mushroom itself, and you have to really clean what's real good. And then my mother would deep fry it. And to me, it tastes like fried potatoes.
You used camas root? There's two kinds, aren't there?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
What's a camas root?
That's that blue flower you see out in the valley, and sometimes there's a white one.
And how would you use it? How would you prepare it and eat it?
I have no idea. It's a root, yeah. And then you have like bear clover. You ever see bear clover? Oh yeah, it was like when I was a kid, bear clover to me was like today a kid would get an ice cream cone or a candy bar. Yeah, it was sweet. Yeah.
What's it look like?
Well, it didn't look like a bear, but it was. I don't really know how to describe it. They only grow about this high, you know, and it's like a bulb on the end. With I don't know, maybe Pat could explain it better than I can.
What color?
There's the different colors. There's white, pink, I guess kind of a yellowish color. Yeah, so they're kind of like not a rainbow color, but they're not all the same color. But when they get to a certain age, they're sweet and moist, you know. But then when they get over that, then it becomes really dry. So it's just a short period of time where you have the opportunity to eat. But it was like a dessert.
Any other questions? Yes.
Cooking oil or whatever else you might use for cooking. You mentioned deep frying. What kind of oils were you using? And then what kind of cooking went on in general? Was it mostly frying or mostly baking or what?
It was always baking.
Okay.
Yeah. My mother, about once, I don't know, twice a month maybe, she would make biscuit spread. And I mean, like the biscuits are like this high and big, and then she made loaves. And there wasn't I don't ever remember us ever buying a loaf of bread. It was always made. And I can still remember it wasn't butter. It was all put together and made into margarine first, I guess. There was a powder. It was like a red powder, and then there was, the margarine was actually kind of white until you added the powder. Then you had to kind of like whip it and whip it and whip it until it became margarine or butter. That was the first margarine made. I think this all started because of the war. And I remember my mother taking me to Ukiah, buying me a pair of shoes, and she had to use these coupons. You only allowed so many coupons for, one pair of shoes a year or whatever it was. I can't remember it yet. And I can barely remember us paying for gas for the coupon. You only allowed like 5 gallons of gas per week. And we couldn't use our...
That was during the war.
During the war, yeah. And I can still remember us driving home from Ukiah with just the parking lights on. So that's about 1944. I was very, very little, but I can still remember that. Yeah. And I always wanted to do, not 1944. Yeah, we did. My mother would like, you don't see this today, that salt, what is it? It's not bacon.
Salt pork.
Salt pork, and they boiled it, and got all the salt out and fried it. But they use either bacon grease, and they saved the bacon grease. You didn't throw it down, you didn't put it in the garbage disposal, you know? And if you used any kind of cooking oil, it wasn't oil, it was lard or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Yeah, people did, I don't think.
And that was because you were only eating 3 meals a day.
No.
You could bake, you could cook with bacon grease. Right.
I think there's more fat people today than then, but I mean, yeah.
Yes, well, I just, as a physician who is always counseling about cholesterol and using lower cholesterol fats to cook with, you know, hearing recommendations of cooking with bacon grease alarms me. But when I realized that you were not eating all of the snack food and candies and junk food and extra snacks that we typically eat, you can get away with cooking with that. And lots of exercise, absolutely, yeah.
Famously now, they don't stop to walk.
Cook it either, because you just tell us the deli. Yeah.
Convenience.
Yeah. Back then when my mother would bake bread, we would get home from school and she'd have some real hot biscuits out, we could put some butter in it, milk, butter in it. That was a treat. Now it's, you know, Dad, I want $5 and give me a Hershey bar and a Pepsi and I'm happy. You know, that's today. I don't think it's $5 anymore, it's probably $35.
Talking about lard and oils, 2 restaurants in my hometown saved all of their drippings and their fat and everything. My grandmother would put it in a kettle with water and boil it and then set it overnight and it would harden and then she'd use that to make soap and she'd give them each a bar of soap and we always had homemade soap. Until the war. Yeah, until the 40s, all through the 30s, homemade soap. There's a lot of fun things you can do. But anyway, and I always helped her with it, you know, with that. So, and washed clothes by hand, well, lots of times, many. When the electricity first came on, we knew it was going to come on the next week, and in our store, we decided to have open house, everybody over and they could have, and Grandma made what you call farmer's cookies, and I think we didn't have chocolate chips like that, but we had raisins, cinnamon raisins, and made great big cookies. They were big cookies, and she called them farmer size. And she made coffee, and we had store cookies. Big Notons were 15 cents a pound, and 2 pounds for a quarter. And we had, Nabisco was the company that made them. And we had bought cases of that, and one other time, we had the Raisin Moons and, just plain vanilla wafers. And had the coffee and tea, but no electricity for electric pots, so we did it all at the house and carried all the pots, we used pots from the store. And made coffee and brought in, and the farmers planned on this, coming for free coffee and cookies. And it was a big celebration, and then they turned the lights on. Every light in town came on at one time. That was a big celebration. So anyway.
I remember one kind of cookie that I used to call when I was growing up. It looked like it was a cracker with raisins or prunes smeared into it. What do they call those? They were good. No, they were like crackers.
Golden raisin bars. Yeah, they were square and they were thin and they were about that long. Yeah.
And thin as a cracker.
They had a zigzag edge.
Any other questions?
I want to know what they did with their parents. We had an ice house here once, and before electricity and stuff, these farm ranches and stuff, how do they keep things cold? I remember my grandfather had a kerosene refrigerator, but then they also put like bags over screens and wet it down. And how did you store stuff?
Well,
anyway, they had an ice plant here, which he made ice and delivered around to the ice boxes. They had a box that held a brick of ice, held a 25-pound block of ice, and they used a kind of a hook to carry it from the delivery truck to the kitchen. And there was also, we didn't have that kind, I remember my grandmother in the house, she had a little cupboard, probably about 10 inches square and about 4 feet tall. And she had a screen in the top of it that went to the attic, and a screen in the bottom of it that went to the under the house. We didn't have a basement, but the area under the house. And then a lot of people had a spring house where they put their food, and some of them put it in a bucket in the well.
Talking about ice, we cut ice from the frozen lakes and kept them in cellars. Now, the ice houses, and they keep them. We'd have ice most through the whole summer, but when it hailed, and it hailed, big ones, like egg size sometimes,
that was when we had fun ice cream. A lot of it.
Just don't use the yellow snow, right?
What?
Just don't use the yellow snow.
No, that's not true.
I feel like that again.
So I'd like to thank our guests for being here tonight, for your time, and for all of your memories, and for your help. And thank you all for being here tonight, and hope that you'll stay tuned and come to our next one.